The stagecoach lurched through December snow, carrying Victoria Ashworth toward what she believed would be a civilized Christmas. Her gloved hands smoothed the burgundy silk of her traveling dress for the 100th time. Outside the frosted window, Wyoming territory stretched white and endless. When the driver finally stopped, Victoria peered out expecting marble columns. Instead, a weathered wooden gate stood before a modest ranch house. Smoke curled from a stone chimney. The structure looked solid enough, but utterly wrong. "This cannot be correct," Victoria said, her voice clipped. The driver climbed down, checking a crumpled paper. "McAllister Ranch, ma'am. Just like the gentleman in Laramie said. I'm expected at the Hendricks estate. Don't know nothing about that." He began unloading her trunk. The ranch house door opened. A man emerged, tall and lean in work clothes, his dark hair touched with gray at the temples. 4 children spilled out behind him, a tumble of ages and energy, their faces smudged with the day's adventures. "Afternoon," the man said, approaching with an easy stride. "Luke McAllister, you look a bit lost." "I am expected at my cousin Margaret Hendricks's estate." Victoria stepped down carefully, her heels sinking into snow. "This is clearly not it. Hendrick's place is 20 miles north." Luke glanced at the darkening sky. "Roads up there are drifted shut. Won't clear till after Christmas at earliest." Victoria's stomach dropped. "That is impossible." "Possible or not, it's true." His tone held no apology, just plain fact. "You're welcome to stay here till the road's open. We've got a spare room." The children pressed closer, staring. The smallest, a girl perhaps 6 years old, tugged her father's sleeve. "Papa, she looks like a princess." "Emma, mind your manners." But Luke's mouth twitched with amusement. Victoria surveyed her options. The temperature was dropping fast. Darkness would fall within the hour. Behind Luke, lamplight glowed warm through the cabin windows. But everything about this place screamed hardship and rural isolation. "How long?" she asked. 4 days, maybe 5. Christmas is day after tomorrow." 4 days in this primitive outpost. Victoria closed her eyes briefly, gathering her composure. "Very well. I have no choice." Luke carried her trunk inside while the children scattered. Victoria followed, her silk skirts whispering against rough-hewn door frames. The interior confirmed her fears. Simple furniture, braided rugs, everything clean but worn. No servants' quarters, no separate parlor. Just one main room serving as kitchen, dining area, and gathering space. "Guest rooms through here." Luke showed her a small chamber with a narrow bed, a washstand, and walls of bare wood. A single window looked out at endless snow. "Thank you," Victoria managed. When he left, she stood alone in the diminishing light. Through the thin walls, children's voices carried laughter, arguments, the percussion of daily life. She unpinned her hat with trembling fingers and set it on the dresser. In the cracked mirror above the washstand, her reflection stared back. Perfectly arranged hair, flawless posture, the mask of a woman who had spent 32 years learning to hide every genuine feeling. "This cannot be happening," she whispered. Outside, Emma's laughter rang clear as bells. The sound pierced something in Victoria's chest, not painful exactly, but unsettling. She turned away from the mirror and sat on the bed, hands folded in her lap. As winter darkness gathered beyond the window, morning arrived with chaos. Victoria descended the narrow stairs expecting a civilized breakfast. Instead, she found all 4 children already at the table. Talking over each other in cheerful disorder, Luke stood at the stove flipping pancakes while trying to referee disputes about who got the last of the syrup. "Morning, Miss Ashworth." Luke glanced over his shoulder. "Coffee's on the table. Hope you're hungry." The oldest girl, perhaps 15, rose quickly. "I'll get you a plate, ma'am." "Thank you." Victoria took the indicated chair, acutely aware of being watched. The three boys ranged from about 13 down to 8. They stared at her with unabashed curiosity, taking in every detail of her morning dress, simpler than yesterday's travel costume, but still obviously expensive. "You from back east?" the middle boy asked. "Samuel, let the lady eat." Luke said mildly, "Yes, I am from Boston." Victoria accepted the plate of pancakes from the older girl. "And you are Catherine?" "Ma'am." "That's Jacob, he's 13. Samuel's 10. And you met Emma already." Emma beamed across the table. "Your dress is so pretty. Is it from a real store?" "Emma," Catherine warned, "it is quite all right." Victoria cut her pancake with precise movements. "Yes, from a dressmaker in Boston." Samuel leaned forward eagerly. "We could teach you ranch stuff while you're stuck here. Papa says you got to stay till Christmas anyway, so you might as well learn something useful." "I hardly think Samuel's real good at roping," Jacob interrupted. "And I can show you how to ride if you want. Catherine knows all about the chickens in the garden, even though nothing's growing now. And I can sing," Emma announced. "Want to hear Perhaps Later?" Victoria's head spun from the rapid-fire conversation. Luke brought his own plate and sat at the head of the table. "Boys, Miss Ashworth might prefer some peace and quiet. She's not used to our particular brand of commotion." "Oh." Samuel's face fell slightly. "Sorry, ma'am." Something about his disappointment pricked Victoria's conscience. "It is simply that I am accustomed to rather different mornings." "What kind of mornings?" Emma asked, syrup on her chin. "Quieter ones, with staff to serve breakfast in the dining room." The children exchanged glances. Jacob frowned. "You mean servants?" "Yes." "Must be lonely," Catherine said quietly. "Eating by yourself like that." The observation struck deeper than intended. Victoria had never considered her formal breakfasts lonely. They were simply proper. But watching this family's easy interactions, their casual affection and constant chatter, she felt the words settle uncomfortably in her chest. After breakfast, Victoria attempted to write to Margaret. She sat in the small parlor area with paper and pen borrowed from Catherine, trying to explain her predicament. But how could she describe this place? The absence of everything she considered essential seemed impossible to convey. She managed half a page before Samuel appeared at her elbow. "Miss Victoria, can I call you that instead of Miss Ashworth? It's awful long." "I suppose that would be acceptable." "Good. So listen, we really do want to show you stuff. Not because we think you're helpless or nothing, but because Papa says when you're a guest, you should make them feel welcome, and we figure you probably don't know much about ranches." His earnestness was oddly touching. "That is accurate. So will you let us, please? It'll make the time go faster, and you won't be so bored." Victoria glanced at her unfinished letter. What was she going to do for 4 days? Sit in this room counting hours? Very well. What did you have in mind? Samuel's grin transformed his face. "Everything. Come on, I'll get the others." And by the time Victoria could protest, he had vanished. She looked down at her letter. At the word "trapped" she had written, and then crossed out. She set the pen aside and followed Samuel's voice into whatever came next. By her third morning, Victoria had learned the rhythm of the ranch. Luke rose before dawn. Catherine started breakfast while he handled the stock. The boys did their chores with varying degrees of enthusiasm. Emma shadowed whoever would let her, chattering constantly. Victoria sat at the kitchen table watching this choreography of family life. Catherine moved efficiently between stove and table, her movements practiced. She was pretty in a wholesome way, with her mother's features softening her father's strong bones. "Do you miss her very much?" Victoria asked quietly. Catherine's hands stilled on the biscuit dough. "Every day. It's been 3 years, but sometimes it feels like yesterday. I lost my parents when I was young. Victoria heard herself say. My aunt raised me. Was she kind? The question hung in the warm kitchen air. Victoria considered lying, then found she could not. She was exacting. She believed in propriety above all else. Kindness was not particularly valued in our household. Catherine turned, her young face grave. That sounds lonely. I never thought of it that way. But even as Victoria spoke, memories surfaced, silent meals, cold bedrooms. Her aunt's sharp corrections whenever Victoria laughed too loudly or ran in the house. The slow, methodical crushing of any spontaneous joy. Emma burst through the door, snow dusting her coat. Miss Victoria, come watch us. We're going to show you everything. Emma, let her finish her coffee. Catherine said. It is quite all right. Victoria rose, surprising herself. I believe I have had sufficient coffee. Outside, the winter air bit clean and sharp. The boys had gathered near the barn, their breath pluming white. Luke stood with them, one hand resting on Jacob's shoulder as he explained something about the horse in the corral. Samuel spotted Victoria and waved enthusiastically. Over here, we're starting with roping. For the next hour, Victoria watched the children demonstrate their skills. Samuel's lasso caught the fence post on his third attempt, and his whoop of triumph rang across the snow. Jacob rode the gentlest horse in a steady circle, his pride evident in his straight back. Catherine showed Victoria the chicken coop and the root cellar, explaining how they preserved food for winter. Emma performed last. She stood in the barn doorway and sang a Christmas carol with more enthusiasm than accuracy, her small voice carrying bravely through the cold air. When she finished, she looked at Victoria with anxious hope. That was lovely, Victoria said, and meant it. Really, Catherine says I'm off-key. You are off-key, Catherine called from near the house. But you're also enthusiastic. Emma giggled and grabbed Victoria's hand. The gesture was so natural, so unguarded, that Victoria froze. No child had ever reached for her so freely. Emma's small hand in her gloved one felt like a question being asked. Miss Victoria. Emma looked up, her smile fading slightly. Don't you know how to smile? The words hit like cold water. Victoria stared at this 6-year-old child who had just asked the most devastating question of her life. Ah, yes, of course I know how to smile. But you don't. Not really. Your mouth goes up, but your eyes stay sad. Emma's observation held no cruelty, only honest curiosity. Why? Luke approached, hearing the conversation. Emma, that's personal. It is all right. Victoria found her voice steady despite the chaos in her chest. Perhaps I have simply forgotten how. Emma squeezed her hand. We can teach you. We're good at making people happy. Aren't we, Papa? You do your best, little bird. Luke's gaze met Victoria's over his daughter's head. Something passed between them. Recognition of a shared loneliness neither had named aloud. That afternoon, Victoria stood at the corral fence watching Luke work with a young horse. The animal moved skittishly, uncertain. Luke's patience was absolute. He never rushed, never forced. Just steady presence and quiet encouragement until the horse took one step closer. Then another. You are very good with her. Victoria said, she just needs time. Everything scared needs time. The words settled over Victoria like snow, soft and undeniable. She gripped the fence rail, her perfectly gloved hands pale against the weathered wood. For 3 years, she had anticipated this Christmas at Margaret's estate familiar company. Predictable conversations, the comfortable tedium of her accustomed life. Now, standing in Wyoming snow watching a man gentle a frightened horse while his children's laughter echoed from the barn. She felt something crack open in her chest. Not desire to leave. Fear of what it might mean to stay. The children launched their campaign the next morning. Today's roping day. Samuel announced at breakfast. Real roping, not just fence posts. Victoria raised an eyebrow. I hardly think I am equipped. Not you doing it, us showing you. Samuel grinned. We want you to see what we can really do. After dishes. They led her to the practice area near the barn. Jacob had set up several targets, buckets, posts, even an old saddle stand that wobbled when hit. Samuel uncoiled his rope with exaggerated confidence. His first throw missed completely. The second caught the bucket but slipped off. The third sailed wide. Victoria opened her mouth to suggest perhaps this was not his strongest skill. Then Samuel's face lit up. Wait, I got this. He adjusted his stance, narrowed his eyes, and let the rope fly. It settled perfectly over the fence post. Yes! Samuel pumped his fist in the air. Did you see that, Miss Victoria? Did you see? I did. Well done. 3 tries isn't so bad. Right, Papa says it takes him sometimes 5 or 6. Your father said that... Victoria glanced at Luke, who stood near the barn watching with arms crossed. Course not. Papa's the best roper in the county. Samuel coiled his rope. But he tells us trying matters more than being perfect the first time. The words echoed strangely. In Victoria's world, perfection was the only acceptable standard. Failure, even small failure, brought shame. Yet here was a 10-year-old boy celebrating a rope trick that took 3 attempts, his pride undiminished. Jacob went next, demonstrating his riding. The horse, a gentle mare named Clover, trotted in smooth circles. Nothing fancy, nothing impressive by show standards. But Jacob sat tall, his hands light on the reins, his smile genuine. She trusts me, he explained when he dismounted. That took a long time. When Papa first got her, she'd been mistreated. Wouldn't let anyone near. But I worked with her every day. And now look. He patted Clover's neck with obvious affection. The horse lowered her head, nuzzling his shoulder. Patience and consistency, Luke said. Joining them. That's what gentles a scared heart. His gaze flickered to Victoria, and she wondered if he was talking about horses at all. Catherine appeared with Emma in tow. Our turn. Come on, Miss Victoria. They led her to the house, where Catherine had prepared a small etiquette demonstration. She'd set the table with their plainest dishes and arranged the children as if for a formal meal. We know we're not fancy, Catherine said, her cheeks pink. But Papa tries to teach us manners anyway. He says just because we live on a ranch doesn't mean we should act like barn animals. Emma giggled. Samuel made a snorting sound. However, Catherine continued, shooting her brothers a look. We don't always remember. So maybe you could show us the proper way, the way they do it in Boston. Victoria stared at this 15-year-old girl who had just asked for help with such unguarded hopefulness. Something in her chest shifted. I would be happy to, though I should warn you Boston etiquette can be rather rigid. That's all right. We're good at learning. For the next hour, Victoria taught them formal table settings, proper posture, how to hold utensils correctly. The children absorbed it all with surprising attention. Emma practiced sitting up straight until her small back ached. Samuel managed to keep his elbows off the table for a full 5 minutes before forgetting. Now you teach us something, Emma demanded when they finished. Teach you what? Something fun. From your world, Victoria's mind went blank. What did she know that was fun? Her education had been comprehensive but joyless languages. Music theory. Household management. Nothing these children would consider entertaining. I am afraid I do not know much about fun. The words hung in the air. Emma's face crumpled with sympathy. That's the saddest thing I ever heard. Emma. Hush, Catherine said gently. But it is sad. Everybody should know about fun. That evening. Victoria sat alone by the fire after the children went to bed. Luke settled into the chair across from her, a mug of coffee warming his hands. They're fond of you, he said quietly. They barely know me. They know enough. Children see clear. Victoria studied the flames. What do they see? Someone who needs what they have to give. Luke sipped his coffee. My kids learned early that perfect doesn't matter. Good-hearted does. They're trying to share that with you. By teaching me ranch skills I will never use. By showing you that trying and failing is better than never trying at all. He set down his mug. Emma was right. You know, about the smiling. Victoria's hands tightened on her skirts. I am perfectly capable of making your mouth move. Sure. But smile with your whole self? When's the last time you did that? She had no answer. Luke nodded as if she had spoken volumes. Thought so, he said softly. Well, you've got 4 days left. Maybe that's enough time to remember. The storm hit on Christmas Eve, as Emma called it. Snow fell thick and fast, turning the world to white static. Luke came in from checking the stock with ice in his beard. We're snowed in proper now, he announced, stamping his boots. Nobody's going anywhere till this blows through. The children cheered. Victoria felt an unexpected flutter relief, though she could not say why. That means Christmas here. Emma danced in circles. Miss Victoria gets to stay for Christmas. By afternoon, the storm had everyone trapped inside. The children grew restless until Catherine suggested stories by the fire. They gathered in the main room, Luke adding logs while the children arranged themselves on the floor. Victoria sat in the chair, apart but present. Tell us one, Miss Victoria, Samuel begged. I am not certain I know appropriate stories. Any story, about you, about Boston, anything. Victoria hesitated. She could recite the fairy tales her governess had approved proper. Moral, dull. But something about the firelight and the storm outside and these earnest faces made her want to offer something true. When I was Emma's age, she began slowly. My aunt hosted a Christmas party, a grand affair with hundreds of guests. I was allowed to watch from the stairs but not participate. The children listened, rapt. The ballroom glittered with candles and jewels. Music played. Everyone looked so elegant, so happy. But I remember looking out the windows and seeing the servants' children playing in the snow. They were throwing snowballs and building snow forts, and their laughter carried all the way up to the house. Victoria's throat tightened. I remember thinking their Christmas looked so much better than mine. They had each other. They had joy. And I had a pretty dress and a cold staircase and nothing to do but watch other people pretend at happiness. Silence filled the room. Then Emma crawled across the floor and climbed into Victoria's lap. The gesture shocked them both, but Emma simply nestled in, her small body warm and trusting. That's really sad, Emma whispered. But you're here now. You can have a real Christmas with us. Victoria's arms came up instinctively, holding this child who offered comfort so freely. When she looked up, all 4 children watched her with something like tenderness. Luke's expression was harder to read, but no less intent. Your turn, Papa, Catherine said softly. Luke shifted, uncomfortable with attention. Not much to tell. Tell about Mama, Jacob said. Miss Victoria should know. Luke was quiet so long Victoria thought he might refuse. Then he began speaking, his voice low and steady. Mary and I built this place from nothing. She was tougher than any woman I ever met, could work from dawn to dark and still have energy to sing the babies to sleep. 3 years ago, fever took her in less than a week. His hands flexed on his knees. Some days I still forget she's gone. I'll turn to tell her something, and there's just empty space. Catherine wiped her eyes. Samuel stared at his boots. I worry every day I'm not enough for them. Luke continued. 1 parent instead of 2. Working so hard to keep this place running that I miss things school programs. birthdays, the 100 small moments Mary would have noticed. I do my best, but best doesn't always feel like enough. Catherine moved to her father, wrapped her arms around his neck. You're plenty. Papa, you're everything. The moment hung suspended grief and love, and the fierce bonds that hold broken families together. Victoria felt like an intruder witnessing something sacred. Then Catherine turned to her. You're afraid too. Aren't you afraid of not being enough? The question was so direct, so perceptive, that Victoria could not deflect. Yes. For what? For anything. Anyone. The admission escaped before she could stop it. I was raised to be perfect. Flawless performance at all times. But perfection is lonely, and I think perhaps I have been lonely my entire life. Mama used to say, Catherine said softly, that home isn't walls. It's people who see you true and love you anyway. Victoria's eyes burned. That is a beautiful sentiment. It's not just sentiment, it's real. Catherine looked at her siblings, at her father. We see each other's mistakes and messes and bad moods, but we're still family. We still belong to each other. Emma yawned against Victoria's shoulder. The storm howled outside. Inside, the fire crackled and shadows danced on the walls. Victoria held this child in her lap and felt something ancient and frozen begin to crack. I have not thought about Margaret's estate in days, she said quietly. Luke met her eyes across the room. That a problem? I do not know. It should be, but it is not. That night, lying in the narrow bed. Victoria listened to the storm. Somewhere in the house, children slept safe and warm. Luke's footsteps moved through familiar rooms, checking doors, banking the fire. The sounds of a father's nightly vigil. For the first time in 32 years. Victoria felt the edges of what home might mean. The writer broke through mid-morning 2 days before Christmas. Victoria heard the commotion from the kitchen where she was helping Catherine prepare bread. Luke met the mail carrier at the door, stamping snow and passing over letters. Got through the North Pass yesterday, the writer said. Roads should be clear in another day or two. Victoria's stomach clenched. Clear roads meant leaving. Luke handed her an envelope. The script was elegant, unmistakable Margaret's hand. Victoria opened it with fingers that trembled slightly. Dearest Victoria, the letter began. I am devastated to learn of your ordeal. Being trapped in such primitive conditions over Christmas must be unbearable. I have arranged for a carriage to collect you the day after Christmas. Please hold fast. Rescue is coming. Good news, Luke asked carefully. My cousin is sending a carriage, day after tomorrow. The children's faces fell. Emma's lip wobbled. Samuel looked at his boots. Even Catherine, who had maintained careful distance at first, seemed stricken. Well, Luke said quietly, that's good. You'll be back where you belong. The words stung precisely because they were true. Or should be true. Or used to be true. Victoria folded the letter with precise movements. Yes, where I belong. That evening she overheard Luke putting the younger children to bed. His voice carried through the thin walls. Can't we ask her to stay? Emma pleaded. She has her own life. Little bird. We can't expect her to stay in ours. But she's sad in her life. She's happy here. People choose where they belong. We can't make that choice for them. Victoria sat frozen in the guest room. She's sad in her life. The child's assessment was brutally accurate. And she had been happy here, or at least the closest to happy she had ever come. She looked at her dresses hanging in the small closet. Expensive silk and wool, tailored to perfection, armor for a world of constant judgment. She could not imagine wearing them now. Could not imagine returning to formal dinners and empty conversations and the endless performance of being someone's idea of acceptable. But what was the alternative? Stay here. Abandon her entire life for a ranch family she had known less than A week. The thought was absurd. A soft knock interrupted her spiral. Miss Victoria. Catherine's voice, hesitant. Come in. Catherine entered carrying something small. We made you gifts for Christmas, but I thought I wanted to give you mine now. She held out a piece of paper, folded and creased. Victoria opened it carefully. The note was brief, written in Catherine's careful script. Thank you for seeing us. Not just looking at us like we're curiosities or projects, but really seeing you treat us like we matter, like we're interesting, like we're enough just as we are. That's rare. Thank you. Victoria's throat closed. Catherine, I do not know what to say. You don't have to say anything. I just wanted you to know, before you left. Catherine moved to the door, then paused. Papa's afraid to ask you to stay. He's afraid we're not good enough for someone like you. But I think maybe you're afraid too. Afraid we might be too good, that you might finally have something worth keeping. And it'll hurt worse when it's gone. You are wise beyond your years. I had a good mother. She taught me to see true. Catherine's smile was sad. I hope you choose what makes you happy. Miss Victoria. Even if it's not us. When she left. Victoria sat holding the note, outside her door. She heard the rustle of movement. One by one, the children crept close and left their gifts. A carved wooden horse from Jacob, hours of work evident in the smooth edges. Pressed wildflowers from Emma, saved from summer and carefully preserved. A poem from Samuel about a lonely star finding its constellation. Victoria gathered them all, these humble offerings, and wept, perhaps for the first time since childhood. She let herself cry without restraint or shame. The tears felt like ice melting, painful and necessary and strangely clean. Through the door, she heard Luke's footsteps pause. He stood there a long moment, knowing she cried, saying nothing. Then his steps moved away, giving her privacy for her grief. But it was not grief exactly. It was the terrifying recognition that she had something to lose. And losing it would break her. Christmas Eve arrived bright and bitterly cold. The children decorated with whatever they could find, strings of berries, paper chains. Pine boughs Catherine cut and arranged around the main room. The effect was humble but genuine. Nothing like the elaborate displays Victoria knew from Boston society. It's not much. Catherine apologized, adjusting a particularly crooked paper chain. It is perfect, Victoria said, and meant it. They spent the day preparing. Victoria helped with cooking, learning to make pie crust from Catherine's patient instruction. Her first attempts were disasters, too much water. Not enough flour, but Catherine only laughed and showed her again. Mama always said cooking is about feel, not rules. You'll get it. By the third try, Victoria produced something that resembled proper dough. The small victory felt disproportionately satisfying. Evening brought the children's Christmas program. They had rehearsed in secret, appearing now in their cleanest clothes with nervous excitement. Samuel performed first a dramatic reading of the Christmas story that he embellished with sound effects and wild gestures. Jacob followed with a demonstration of rope tricks, completing patterns Victoria had not seen before. Emma sang 3 carols, still off-key, but with such conviction that Victoria had to bite her lip to keep from laughing with pure delight. Catherine's gift was different. She played the old piano in the corner, coaxing music from the worn keys. The melody was simple, but hauntingly beautiful. When she finished, tears tracked down her cheeks. "Mama's favorite song," she whispered. I wanted her here too." Victoria crossed the room and pulled Catherine into her arms. This girl-becoming woman who carried so much. She is here, in all of you, in every moment of love and care you show each other. The children gathered close, a nod of family grief and comfort. Luke stood apart, his expression raw. Victoria met his eyes over his children's heads, and something passed between them, recognition that they were both terrified of wanting too much, of hoping too hard, of the vulnerability that came with letting someone in. After the children finally went to bed after much protest and promises to stay awake for Santa Luke, and Victoria sat by the dying fire. "They're good kids," Victoria said softly. "They are. Mary raised them right before—" He stopped, jaw tight. "I do my best with what she started." "You are an excellent father." "Some days I wonder." Luke stared into the flames. 4 kids is a lot for one person. The boys need a firm hand. Catherine needs guidance. I can't always give woman things, mother things. Emma asks for her mama every night before sleep. He rubbed his face. "And here you come. And for 1 week they have what's been missing. Someone gentle and refined who still sees their worth. Someone who teaches them and learns from them and makes them feel special. Luke, I'm afraid to want you to stay." The words came out rough, afraid to even think it. "Because you belong in a different world, education, culture, comfort. We're just a struggling ranch with too much work and not enough money. We can't offer you anything close to what you're used to." Victoria turned to face him. "Have you ever been happy?" Luke, really, truly happy. He looked startled by the question. "With Mary." "Before and after moments, when the kids laugh, when something I've worked for succeeds, small things. I've never been happy." The admission hung between them. "Not once in 32 years. I've been comfortable, proper, acceptable, but never happy. Not until I came here by accident and found 4 children who teach me joy and a man who shows me that strength can be gentle." Luke's breath caught. Victoria. The house creaked. Small footsteps padded above Emma, restless with Christmas excitement. Then a different sound. Emma's door opening, her feet on the stairs, slow and purposeful. She appeared in her nightgown, rubbing her eyes, but clearly not asleep. "Papa, Miss Victoria, I can't sleep." "Come here, little bird." Luke opened his arms. Emma climbed into her father's lap but reached for Victoria's hand. "Are you really leaving tomorrow?" The question was direct, unflinching. Victoria looked at this 6-year-old child who had taught her more about living than 3 decades of careful education. "Aye, the carriage is coming. But do you want to go?" Silence filled the room. Luke held his daughter. Victoria held Emma's hand. The fire popped softly. "No," Victoria whispered. "I do not want to go." "Then don't." Emma's logic was beautifully simple. "Stay here. Stay with us." "Emma, it's not that easy," Luke began. "Papa." Miss Victoria smiles now. Emma's voice carried absolute conviction. "She didn't when she came, but she does now. That means she's home. Mama always said home is where your smile lives." The child's certainty broke something in Victoria's chest. Home is where your smile lives. She looked at Luke, at Emma between them, at this simple room that glowed with love and work and genuine warmth. "Your mama was a wise woman," Victoria said softly. Emma yawned, satisfied with her pronouncement. Luke carried her back upstairs, leaving Victoria alone with the embers. When he returned, he sat down heavily. They did not speak for a long time. "Finally," Luke said, "tomorrow's Christmas. Day after. The carriage comes." "Yes." And then Victoria looked at her hands, the hands that had learned to knead dough, to braid Emma's hair, to hold Catherine through grief. "And then I must choose." "Seems to me you already have," Luke said quietly. "Question is whether you're brave enough to claim it." He left her there, sitting alone in the darkness, facing the most terrifying decision of her life. Christmas morning dawned clear and bright. Victoria woke to children's whispers outside her door, barely contained excitement vibrating through the walls. She dressed carefully in her simplest day dress, the one that had become softest from wearing. It felt least like costume and most like clothing. The main room glowed with morning light on snow. The children clustered near the small tree Luke had cut, their eyes bright with anticipation. Under the branches sat humble packages wrapped in brown paper and tied with string. "Miss Victoria," Emma launched herself across the room. "It's Christmas. Papa said we had to wait for you." They gathered together, and Luke distributed gifts. Practical things, mostly new socks, a pocket knife for Jacob, hair ribbons for Catherine, a rag doll Emma had wanted. Each child received their gift with genuine delight. No disappointment at the simplicity. Victoria had nothing to give. She had arrived with only her traveling trunk. Nothing purchased or prepared. Shame heated her face. "I apologize. I did not. I have no gifts." "You're here," Catherine said simply. "That's gift enough." They included her in their mourning as if she belonged there. Luke made pancakes. The children chattered about their presents. Emma insisted Victoria braid her hair with the new ribbons. Everything felt warm and right and terrifyingly temporary. By afternoon, Victoria's chest felt tight with unspoken dread. The carriage would arrive any moment. Then hoofbeats sounded. An elegant vehicle pulled up to the gate. Clearly expensive. Clearly from another world. Margaret Hendricks descended in fashionable furs and immaculate traveling costume. The children clustered near the door, watching. Luke stood silent, his jaw set. Victoria walked out alone to meet her cousin. "Victoria." "Thank heavens." Margaret rushed forward, then stopped, taking in Victoria's appearance. "Darling, what has happened to you? You look positively windswept. Your hair, your dress." Her nose wrinkled. "Is that cooking grease on your sleeve?" "Hello, Margaret." "Well, no matter. We'll have you properly cleaned up by evening. I've prepared the guest suite hot water. Proper clothing, civilization." Margaret glanced at the ranch house with barely concealed distaste. "What you have endured, sleeping in a common cabin with how many children?" Four. Margaret shuddered delicately. The noise alone must have been unbearable. "And no staff, no proper meals, my dear. You are a saint for surviving this ordeal." Behind Margaret, the carriage waited, elegant, comfortable, familiar. Everything Victoria had known for 32 years sat in that vehicle, waiting to reclaim her. She looked back at the ranch house. Luke stood in the doorway, Catherine beside him. The boys flanked them. Emma pressed against her father's leg, watching with wide eyes. "Come along," Margaret said briskly. "The sooner we leave, the sooner you can forget this unfortunate incident." Victoria turned to her cousin. Margaret represented everything she used to be polished, proper, protected from any genuine feeling. Looking at her was like looking at a ghost of her former self. "They are not an incident," Victoria said quietly. "They are a family." "Well, yes, charming in a rustic sort of way." "Margaret, stop!" Victoria's voice carried unexpected steel. "Do not speak of them like that." Her cousin blinked. "Victoria, what has gotten into you?" Victoria walked back to the house. Luke's expression was carefully neutral, giving nothing away. But Emma broke free and ran to her, wrapping small arms around Victoria's waist. "Don't go," Emma whispered. "Please don't go." Victoria knelt, eye level with this child who had asked the question that changed everything. "Do you remember what you said about smiles and home?" Emma nodded solemnly. "You were right." Victoria touched Emma's cheek gently. "You were absolutely right." She stood and faced Luke. His eyes held everything: hope, fear, longing, careful restraint. Victoria took his hand, then Catherine's. She pulled the girl close. "I am not leaving," she said clearly, behind her. Margaret gasped. "You cannot be serious." Victoria did not turn. "I am completely serious. You would throw away your entire life for this struggling ranch children who are not even yours." A man you barely know. Now Victoria did turn. She looked at her cousin, at the world she used to inhabit, the values she used to serve, the empty perfection she used to call life. I am not throwing it away. I am finally claiming it. Her voice was steady, certain. Everything I thought I wanted, everything I was taught to value was a beautiful, hollow shell. This is real. These people are real. This love is real. Love. Margaret's tone dripped disbelief. After 1 week of learning what love actually looks like, Victoria took Luke's other hand. Not performance, not obligation. Just genuine care and messy humanity and the courage to be imperfect together. Margaret drew herself up. Your aunt would be horrified. My aunt spent her life measuring worth by the wrong standards. I will not make the same mistake. Then you are choosing poverty, hardship, social ruin. I am choosing joy. Victoria's smile was real full and true and lighting her whole face. Finally. Margaret stared, clearly uncertain how to proceed. Then she sniffed. Well, I can see this conversation is pointless. When you come to your senses, if you come to your senses, do not expect immediate welcome back into society. This kind of scandal does not fade quickly. I am not coming back. Her cousin shook her head and returned to the carriage. The elegant vehicle pulled away, taking with it the last physical link to Victoria's former life. Victoria watched it go without regret. When she turned back, Luke was looking at her with something like wonder. You stayed. I stayed. Why? Victoria glanced at the children, Jacob grinning, Samuel whooping, Catherine crying happy tears, Emma dancing in circles, then back to Luke. Because you asked me if I'd ever been happy, and I had not. Not until I found all of you. She stepped closer. Because your children taught me that trying and failing is better than never trying at all. Because home is not walls. It is people who see you true and love you anyway. Luke cupped her face in his calloused hands. Are you sure this life is hard? Money's tight? Work never ends. We can't offer you anything close to what you had. You can offer me everything that matters. Victoria covered his hands with hers. A place to belong. People to love. A reason to smile that reaches all the way to my eyes. He kissed her, then gentle, reverent, full of promise. The children erupted in cheers. Emma launched herself at them both, squeezing between in an enthusiastic hug. The boys pounded Luke's back. Catherine wiped her eyes and whispered, Welcome home. Victoria laughed a real laugh, unguarded and bright. The sound rang out across the snow-covered ranch, carrying joy into the clear winter air. She had arrived at the wrong ranch by accident, but she had found her true home by choice. 3 days into the new year, Victoria stood at the ranch gate in winter dusk. Behind her, lamplight glowed warm from the cabin windows. Inside, the children helped Luke prepare supper, their voices carrying out in comfortable chaos. Emma sang off-key. Samuel and Jacob argued about whose turn it was to set the table. Catherine mediated with the patience born of long practice. Victoria breathed deep, cold air sharp in her lungs. The landscape stretched endless under dimming sky, wild, harsh, beautiful in its uncompromising honesty. Her expensive trunk sat unopened in the guest room. She wore one of Catherine's hand-me-down work dresses, altered to fit. Her hair was pinned back simply. Her hands bore the marks of labor, a small burn from the stove, a scratch from helping in the barn. She had never looked less like the woman who arrived in December. She had never felt more herself. The sound of hoofbeats drew her attention. Luke rode in from checking the north pasture, Jacob beside him on Clover. They spotted her and waved. Victoria waved back, her heart lifting at the simple sight of them coming home. Home. The word fit now, settled into place like a puzzle piece finally finding its match. Luke dismounted and led his horse to the barn. Jacob followed, chattering about something he had seen. Victoria watched their easy partnership, father and son, work and teaching, the daily rhythms of ranch life. When Luke emerged, he found her still standing at the gate. He approached with that steady stride she had come to love, work coat dusted with snow, face weathered by sun and wind. "Waiting for something?" he asked softly. "Waiting for you." Victoria turned to face him. "All of you. I was just thinking how right this feels. How impossible it seemed 3 weeks ago that I could belong anywhere. And now you're home." "Yes." She leaned into him, his arm coming around her shoulders. "Luke, I need to tell you something." His body tensed slightly. "What?" "I wrote to my bank in Boston. I am selling everything, the house my parents left me, the investments my aunt managed. It will take time to settle. But when it does, I want to put it toward this ranch, toward our future." Luke pulled back to look at her. "Victoria, you don't have to." "I know, but I want to. This is my home now. Your children are becoming mine. Your dreams are becoming mine. Let me invest in our future together. It's a substantial amount. Enough to help. Enough to ease the burden." She touched his face. "You have carried so much alone. Let me help carry it now." Luke's eyes shone suspiciously bright. "Mary would have liked you. She would have said you were exactly what we needed. I hope I can honor her memory. Not replace her, I could never replace her. But add to what she built. Help raise her children. Love the man she loved." "I never thought—" His voice roughed. "After Mary, I thought I would be alone, that the kids would grow up and leave, and I would just keep working this land until I couldn't anymore. I never imagined." Victoria kissed him, silencing his doubts, when she pulled back. She smiled. "Life is strange. I came here expecting luxury and found something infinitely more valuable. What's that, everything?" She gestured to the ranch, the modest house, the barns that needed repair, the fields sleeping under snow. "This, you, them, a life that means something, work that matters, love that is real." Emma's voice called from the doorway. "Papa, Miss Victoria, supper's ready. And Catherine says if you don't come now, Samuel's going to eat everything." They laughed and walked toward the house together. Through the window, Victoria saw the children gathered around the table. Catherine was pouring milk. Jacob was stealing a biscuit. Samuel was making Emma giggle. The scene was so ordinary, so beautifully mundane. Inside, the warmth enveloped them. Emma immediately claimed Victoria's attention, showing her a drawing she had made. Luke hung his coat and hat, moving through the familiar space with unconscious grace. Over supper, the children discussed plans for spring planting. Victoria listened, learning the rhythms of ranch seasons, understanding that each cycle brought its own challenges and rewards. She was part of it now, not a visitor, not a guest, but family. After dishes, they gathered by the fire. Emma curled in Victoria's lap. Drowsy from the meal, Catherine sat at the piano, playing softly. The boys sprawled on the floor, trading good-natured insults. Luke sat beside Victoria, his shoulder touching hers. "Are you happy?" he asked quietly. Just for her. Victoria looked at the child sleeping in her arms, at the teenagers becoming adults before her eyes, at the boys who had taught her that trying mattered more than perfection, at the man who had shown her that love was gentle strength and patient courage. "Yes," she said simply. "I am happy." Outside, winter darkness deepened, but inside the ranch house, lamplight glowed. The fire crackled. Children's laughter and conversation filled the spaces that had once felt empty. Victoria had spent 32 years learning to smile with just her mouth. Now she smiled with her whole self, with her eyes, her heart, her spirit. She had arrived at the wrong ranch by accident, but she had stayed at the right home by choice, and in choosing them, she had finally found herself, not the perfect woman her aunt had demanded, not the proper Lady Boston society required. But the genuine woman these 5 people loved: messy, imperfect, learning, trying, belonging. It was enough. It was everything. And as snow fell softly outside and the new year stretched ahead with all its uncertain promise, Victoria sat surrounded by her chosen family and knew, finally, what it meant to be home.